I had this camera for 2 weeks when it came out first, and I absolutely, it's shit, it's all this blah 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 shite. Probably taken about 300,000, 350,000 photos in the last year. Have I used this camera in auto? No, because I'm not a virgin. You're shooting a podcast and you're starting to shit the pants. But what I do have to say is, we're on. Okay. Welcome to my podcast style Canon R5 Mark II review. I've had this camera since the day it came out, so this is like a 1 year review. I use it professionally every single day for multiple shoots here in the studio. So I think that my opinion can be a bit valid. I'm not paid by fucking anyone. Look at my subscribers. You think Canon are paying me to do a review on this camera? They're not. I previously made a video last year about why this camera is bad, but I actually got a defected unit when I bought this camera at first. So I had this camera for 2 weeks when it came out first, and I absolutely hated it. That ended up being because I had a defected unit. I had to wait 4 weeks to get another unit sent out, and since then I've been using it daily up until now, which is today is the 12th of November. I think the camera came out around this time last year. So there's my 1 year review. Now, out of 10, what do I rate this camera? I rate it an 8.5 out of 10. There's a couple of things that I would fix in this camera that I'm not happy with, but for what I use it for 99% of the time, it is a beast. So, let's start off with the image quality. We all know it has a 45 megapixel sensor, but why do I love the image quality? So, I started my photography journey with a Canon M50. I then went to the M6 Mark II. I then went to the R6 Mark I. Then I went to an R6 Mark II. Then I went to the R5C. Then I got a C70. Then I went to the R5 Mark II. I upgraded from the R5C, which is this camera I'm shooting on right now, to this camera because I came out of the video game and I went 99% photography. And I believed this camera would be, when I needed it for video, I believed this camera would be a beast of a video camera. But we'll get to that. So let's start with the image quality. When I came from the R6 Mark II, doing studio photography as a retoucher, to the R6 or to the R5 Mark II, the difference that I noticed as a retoucher when I'm punching in, when I'm fixing skin, when I'm doing all that, was absolutely unbelievable, to the point of where I can't go back to 24 megapixels. And you can hear all this bollocks online. Oh, megapixels don't matter. You won't know this. You won't know this. You won't know that. If you're a professional photographer, you should know this. I retouch images, I fix skin, I retouch headshots, I retouch full body. I noticed the difference between the Canon R6 Mark II, which is 24 megapixel, and the 45 megapixel. I can't go back any lower than 45 megapixel. Now, when I shoot at 100 ISO 99% of the time. I'm using lights, I'm in a studio environment, I'm in a gym environment, and I use lights all of the time. So I'm never above 100 ISO. So am I getting noise? No. Am I getting the best image out of the camera? 100%, because I'm using lights and because I'm using the camera the way it should be using. So obviously the image is going to be good. Now, I shoot in dark gym environments as well. And in dark gym environments, I remember watching reviews and people going, oh, the dynamic range isn't great. It's not as good as the R5 Mark I. It's shit. It's all this blah, 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 shite. The Canon R5 Mark II dynamic range is very, very good. And will you notice that it has 2 stops less or all that fancy words? No. I brighten up very dark areas in gyms and I never have an issue. I went from the R6 to the R6 Mark II to the R5 Mark II, and I didn't notice any difference in the shadows to my eye when I'm editing. Did I notice it on the skin, having more information when I'm retouching? 100%. The 45 megapixels are absolutely amazing. But did I notice it in the shadows when I'm bumping up the shadows in the background of a dark gym? No, I did not. So the dynamic range, in my opinion, is absolutely perfect if you're editing photos. Now, the autofocus. Again, I want to say it again. I came from the R6 I to the R6 II to the R5 Mark II. The autofocus on this camera is a weapon. It is an absolute weapon. And I think I take around 1,000 photos a day, multiply that by over a year. I've probably taken about 300,000, 350,000 photos in the last year. I would say I missed focus, if I ever missed focus. I actually don't think this camera ever missed focus in a studio environment where I'm shooting. Now, all cameras should, but I shoot people from the back, I shoot people from the front, I shoot people through machines. And when I have this set up correctly with my autofocus settings that I like to use, which is area AF with the eye detection, this camera does not miss. One thing I do want to chat about, and that's why I've got the 70-200 right here. One issue I do have with this camera that I can't remember having coming from the R6 Mark II is the IBIS. I use the 85mm 1.2 most of the time, which is this camera right here. Hello, 85mm. And I use the 50mm 1.2, which is this camera here. Hello, 50mm. But I sometimes use my 70-200. If I really want to punch in and crop in the background or whatever when I'm doing studio stuff. If you haven't watched my studio tour video, check it out on the channel. You'll see the studio I'm shooting. It's my own studio. But if I'm at around 125, 135 and above, I get this really weird wobble before it focuses on the subject, and then I take the photo. Now, I can imagine if you're shooting sports or you're shooting fast-moving objects where the camera's moving a lot, this can be a bit of an issue. Now, it doesn't really bother me in the studio, but I do pick up the camera, I look through the eyepiece, or I look through the screen, and I see it wobbling, and I'm like, why does it wobble for so much? So that is one little issue that I have with this camera, is that little bit of IBIS wobble, but it doesn't affect me. But if you're using this camera for you're watching this video for other reasons, please do note that I do notice an IBIS wobble. It takes about 1 to 2 seconds for the IBIS wobble to stop, and then it locks onto what it's focusing on, then the IBIS kicks in and it's rock solid. But that is one issue that I went into. I know I do 90% of the time I do photography. 90% of the time I do photography, but I do come from a videography background. I do still have retainer clients that require me for video. So I do use this camera for video. C-Log 2, 4K, 25, fine, beautiful. It is unbelievable. It is the best video image I have ever shot with. And I'm shooting on the C70 over here, which also has a beautiful image. And I'm shooting in the R5 Mark or the R5C here, which also has a beautiful image. But the C-Log 2 8K oversample 4K 25 fine in this camera for video is absolutely unbelievable. I've nothing to say about it. But what I do have to say is, why did Canon give us absolutely potato shit quality 4K 50? You shoot a video and you have a couple of clips in 4K 25, then you gotta bang that bad boy into 4K 50. It goes into this line skipped bollocks, which we're paying $5,000 for, and it gives us potato quality 4K. 1 year in, a load of firmware updates that were meant to come, that were going to give us this 4K 50 fine, and they still haven't given it to us. And you can go on about, oh, but it'll overheat, it'll over this, it'll over that. Who's recording 4K 50 for like an hour? No one. If you're recording for an hour, you're doing podcasts, you're doing football matches, you're doing all this kind of stuff. You're not recording for 50 or to an hour straight in 4K 50. Well, I wouldn't be anyway. But still give us the option of 4K 50 fine. Give us the option of the oversampled one or the line skipped one as well. Sorry. If you want to shoot for that long period of time. But there's no reason why this camera can shoot 8K 50 or 8K 60 if you're over in America. There's no reason why this camera shouldn't have 4K oversampled 50 in it. It just drives me absolutely insane, and it nearly makes the 4K 50 in this camera unusable, because you cannot put a 4K 50 video into a video where you're shooting 4K 25 fine, because the difference is just light and day, and it's absolutely stupid. To stick to more video stuff, and I'll probably go back to photography at a later point, more video issues that I have with this camera is people say, oh, it doesn't overheat, it doesn't do that, oh, it doesn't do this, oh, bollocks. 4K 25 in Ireland, which is not warm, overheats. Sometimes it's after 38 minutes, sometimes it's after an hour. If you plug power into it, and I only found this out recently, if you plug power into it, it overheats in about 35 to 38 minutes, and you're starting to panic. You're shooting a podcast and you're starting to shit the pants. This camera is going to turn off, and you're there behind it and you're blowing the fan into it. I've tried to get the fan on the bottom of it, but apparently it's still not available in Ireland. So I don't have that yet. That would probably rectify the problem, but it does overheat when you've power plugged in. I have noticed that in 4K 25, if you just go off the battery, it will get to around the hour mark and it won't be overheating. That's usually when the battery starts to die, and that's now when I plug in the power and I can get to around an hour and a half with no overheating. I'm not shooting for much longer than that, so it works for me. But I did want to make a point that this camera does overheat. But the main point is, Canon gave us potato 4K 50. Okay, I'm going to revert back to my notes, and I'm going to see what else I missed on the photo standpoint. I know it has a stack sensor, but I don't really understand what this stack sensor bollocks is. I shoot in a studio. I use it for studio photography. I retouch all of my I retouch all of my images. That's what I use it for. So if you're a studio photographer, do I recommend it? 100%. Do I notice the stack sensor and all this? No. Do I notice any dynamic issues in the shadows? No. Nothing to eye. But I do notice that it does have unbelievable quality and sharpness and detail when you're punched in and when you're doing like retouch and studio stuff. Now, we'll continue on. Another negative that I want to point out, this camera is €4,999. Sometimes it's a bit cheaper if there's a Canon deal. Do I think this camera is worth it? Yes, 100%. But do I think Canon are screwing us a little bit with the crappy 4K 50? 100%. Who do I recommend this camera for? This video is really going off the cuff, isn't it? Going well? You agree? Yeah, will I keep going? Okay, Jack says keep going. Jack's my videographer. I'll tag him in the caption below, pro view. So shout out to him for coming down and doing all this for me, because I couldn't be arsed doing it on my own. So the camera is €4,999 in Ireland as we speak right now. Now, who do I recommend it for? I can only recommend it to the people that do similar work to me. In studios, is this camera a powerhouse? 1,000,000%. Was it worth the €4,999? 1,000,000%. It does not miss focus ever. I shoot models that pose a lot. Have you got a little bit of B-roll from our last YouTubes? So Jack will actually put in a little bit of the B-roll because he shot my last YouTubes as well. I shoot models that are in quite difficult poses, and I need to be able to get that photo fast because it hurts their back, they're arching their back, they're stretching their hamstrings, they're tensing their shoulders, they can cramp up. It's a quick job. It's in, pose, bang, 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 off. This camera does not miss on the focus no matter where you shoot it. This studio could be pitch dark, no modeling lights. It does the exposure fucking brightness thing, and it locks focus, and it's an absolute powerhouse. Yeah, I think I kind of covered everything that I wanted to cover in this Canon R5 Mark II video. Do I recommend it? 100%. Do I see a couple of things that they should change in it? 1,000,000%. Just give us 4K 50, fine, and this camera will be a powerhouse. Is the autofocus good? It's amazing. It doesn't need to change. I don't need faster autofocus. It does not miss. Is the image quality good? Yes, it's absolutely unbelievable. The image quality is fucking class, and I don't think I'll need any more until maybe I shoot on a 60 megapixel camera for retouching purposes. If you don't retouch your images and you're there shooting and printing, you probably don't need it. But do I love it? 100%. The ergonomics of it in my hand, actually, now that I just thought of that, the ergonomics, I love Canon's ergonomics. I hate Sony's user interface. I've never used a Nikon. I've never actually, to be fair, let's not slag Sony enough now, but I've used Sony once and I hate it. I've used Canon since the day I started. The ergonomics of this camera, for me being a 6'2" male in my hand, I absolutely love it. The dials are so easy to get to. The menu settings on the camera are so easy to use. I've it set up in a way that I can be so quick with it. I've gotten to a point of where it's like a PlayStation controller and I don't really need to think about what I'm doing. When I'm shooting through the IBIS and I can see my reviewed images and I see the histogram, I just flick and I don't even know what I'm flicking. I know if I want to get a bit more aperture. I know ISO, even though I don't move my ISO, but I know where it is. So I'm using this camera like a PlayStation controller, and I got used to that. And I believe I got so used to it, not because I'm using it for so long, but because Canon made the camera so well that I could get used to it. A PlayStation controller is designed so well. An Xbox controller is designed so well, so you don't have to think. And I think Canon nail it with their cameras. Whether you're using the C70, which is this camera, or the R5 Mark II, which is this camera, you can get so used to the camera that you don't even think. And that can be so useful when you're shooting, when you're trying to be quick, when you got back-to-back shoots. So yeah. One thing I actually don't use is the top screen, because I never had one. So can I give a review on the top screen? No. The only time I use the top screen is when I turn the camera on and I check if there's battery in the camera. Only time. Do I use it for anything else? Absolutely not. Have I used this camera in auto? No, because I'm not a virgin. Have I used this camera on any of like the auto settings? Again, no, because I'm not a virgin. So all in all, I would rate this camera, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. If they gave us the 4K 50, fine, it would be a 10 out of 10. There's no issues with this camera. If you're a studio photographer and you're thinking about getting it and you want to use it heavy, I would 100% recommend it. When you pair it with stuff like the 85 over here, the 50mm here, the 70-100 RF here, it ain't missing. It is an absolute powerhouse. Hope you enjoyed my podcast and the R5 Mark II review. See you in the next video.